knows from nobody.
Your superstars have off games.
Follow us on social media at Celtics Talk Weekly.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into Celtics Postgame Live. I am your host, Rob Atayan. I am with my co-host, Seamus, a.k.a. Celtics Everyday. The Boston Celtics defend home court and defeat the Memphis Grizzlies 120-117. Oh, I'm sorry, 120-107. Jason Tatum led all scorers in that contest with 37. Ja Morant, kind of turned it up in the second half. He tagged along 35. Seamus, Celtics 2-0 in the current homestand. Was this finally the Celtics' statement game to the league?
I believe it was. We're hot again. I'm a believer in this team now. It's amazing that back in January, back in December, I came on this program and I was so negative about the Celtics. Pessimistic, definitely.
Rightfully so.
And rightfully so, exactly, because there was a stretch where this team displayed absolutely nothing to us that they could be a good basketball team or they could be a team that can make an impact moving forward. However, now we look at it coming into March now. This was, I believe, our first game in March. Am I right? Or I don't know if that game was on March.
Second game.
So, but still, second game in March. And we have 2 statement wins already this month. Yeah. One against the Hawks, one against the Grizzlies, both on national television, and both games that didn't necessarily come down to the stretch, but both games that the Celtics certainly had to finish out without, having a major lead. And I think this team, I don't know how far they can go, but they're certainly for real. And they just beat one of the best teams in basketball tonight.
Yes. So I think there's a lot to take out of this game. I would argue that it was our best win of the year, I think. Against a Memphis team that was fairly healthy, missing Dylan Brooks. Mind you, he's kind of been out of the lineup for a decent amount of time. Memphis still playing really, really well, despite Derek being out of the lineup. 8-2 in their last 10, 3 seed in the Western Conference, one of the MVP candidates in Ja Morant on the other side. The Boston Celtics came into this game, no Jaylen Brown. All right, Aaron Nesmith got the starting spot. Obviously, Nesmith went down in the first quarter with that right ankle sprain. We'll talk about that later. But the Celtics came in tonight and they didn't let up. Kind of a slow start to the first quarter. Defense kept them into the game. Their identity has been defense, though, so we'll take that. They kind of stuck around defensively. Second half started, and the basket started getting bigger and bigger. Al Horford came out and looked like vintage Al. 21 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 blocks, 4 of 8 from downtown. Smart had a hell of a game, 18 and 12 assists. Robert Williams, 10 points, 12 rebounds, 3 blocks, 3 steals. I mean, Grant Williams off the bench had 11. Derek White had 12. I mean, the Celtics dominated, I'd say, from start to finish. They really just in what speaks that's the loudest to me, Seamus, to really shows the Celtics improvement. The Grizzlies came knocking, right? With right around 4 minutes left in this game. The Grizzlies came knocking. Desmond Bane hit a couple threes. Morant started to get hot. He had 38. Excuse me, I said 35. Morant started to get hot. But the Celtics did not let up. The offense continues to look smooth down the stretch. The fourth quarter really just hasn't those problems kind of seem to be sizzling away. And the Celtics are the hottest team in the NBA right now. They're playing the best basketball.
Well, yeah, and they just beat one of the hottest teams in the NBA too, and that is always something that validates a squad moving forward, is the fact that, 2 of these teams, it's on national TV, it was flexed into this spot over the Heat and the Nets, and the league probably looked at that and went, oh, we made a mistake because Kevin Durant's coming back, but it ended up both games were fairly good. The Heat and Nets game came down to the stretch, but this game tonight, both of these teams were utterly hot coming into this matchup, and the Celtics, I didn't necessarily think they dominated on the level in which we're used to seeing them dominate, but I get where you're coming from in the sense that they controlled this game for most of the way through. And really, I thought one thing coming into tonight was, can the Celtics hang physically with the Memphis Grizzlies? And I thought the Celtics were actually more of the aggressor. in this game coming in. And that was something that surprised me. And if the Celtics can keep that moving forward, and we all know their identity is defense at this point, but if the Celtics can keep that same persona moving forward of being more physical on a nightly basis, I mean, this is already a scary team. If they continue that, I mean, the ceiling is just so high right now. And like I said, the NBA, like we mentioned too, the NBA is just wide open right now.
Yeah, and let's take a look at since December 31st, since the Celtics kind of had that turnaround, they I believe are 22-8 since December 31st. In those 22 wins, we have beaten teams such as the Phoenix Suns, the Memphis Grizzlies, the Denver Nuggets, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Brooklyn Nets, obviously hobbled, and the Toronto Raptors. Or no, sorry, not Toronto. I apologize about that. Not Toronto. So the Celtics have, people have said weak schedule, competition against unhealthy teams, but yet I look at who we've beaten, and when when the all the lights are on, right, and it's prime time, the Celtics continue to respond in a positive manner, and tonight they looked phenomenal. Tatum, 37 points. I mean, really got everything he wanted in that fourth quarter. The last 5 minutes just completely took over the game. And Jaylen Brown is out. And I don't think that's something we should look past. Is I think a big concern with the Celtics team was, when Brown's out or Tatum's out or one of them are playing well, who's going to step up? Can someone step up? This is the second night in a row. Grant Williams played well. Derek White, kind of gave us a little spark, got hurt. Start that fourth quarter off that kind of took him out for the rest of the game. He could have played if he wanted to, if they needed him. He decided to sit. I do think the more I look at it, the credit to Grant Williams for really adding that true depth and shooting to the bench. Tice came in, gave us 6 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. I mean, it's tough to find a point to criticize this team on. If I were to point one out, Seamus, maybe you could agree with me here. I thought the play was very sloppy in the first half. The turnover number, I believe, were 9 in the first, 5 in the second. So we cleaned it up a little bit in the second half. But personally, I'd say you got to take care of the ball. Luckily, we really just shut Memphis down offensively.
Yeah, and I would totally agree with the turnover point where in the first half, we had 11 turnovers in the first half to their 3. And then we ended up ending the game, like you said, we only had 5 in the second half. So they definitely cleaned that up down the stretch. But tonight's game, if there's one bit of criticism that we could give to the Celtics, and it's not even, I wouldn't say it's really criticism, but it's more of they need Jaylen Brown back because they cannot consistently win with this formula, especially on offense. I mean, I'm convinced that on most nights we're going to have games like this where we're the more physical team, we're the aggressor on the defensive end of the floor, especially after tonight's game where, we're facing one of the more physical teams in the league and we come in and just kind of push them around a bit. And we should have more of those nights moving forward. But offensively, we were gaining groove with Jaylen Brown in there, and Aaron Nesmith, he wasn't as much of an offensive factor, but him being in the lineup too, you expect him to hit a couple of shots as well. But missing those two guys, especially Jaylen Brown, you saw tonight in the shot numbers, Marcus Smart, he's a guy that is good at low volume shooting. He's good at being elite defensively and just playmaking, right? Those are his 3 areas of this is what you want to see out of Marcus Smart. And tonight he took 17 shots. He was 7 of 17 tonight. He was, I believe, 3 of 10 in the first half or 4 of 10 in the first half. And, Marcus Smart over time with the Celtics, it hasn't worked out when he is taking more and more shots. And that's why we need Jaylen Brown back in the lineup, is the fact that if the Celtics continue to not have him or not have Nesmith and say Derek White moving forward, a lot of responsibility is going to go on Marcus Smart, Al Horford, and, say Derek White does come back, him and all those guys. You don't necessarily want them to be a primary option moving forward. What?
Seamus, I got some breaking news for you.
What?
Nick STAUSKAS is agreeing to sign a 2-year deal with the Boston Celtics.
Well, there's your shooting. That's actual shooting. I mentioned the other day Matt Ryan and Sam Hauser, they were advertised as, hey, we added shooting to the roster. But in reality, if those two guys, one of them's a two-way guy now, Matt Ryan, and Sam Hauser, he is a two-way guy converted into a standard guy. If those guys aren't actually playing, you don't necessarily add any shooting. Like those two guys didn't play tonight. The Celtics, they didn't add any shooting to their roster in that sense. But if Nick Stauskas can come in and he appears to have gained a standard deal with the team,
2-year
he can
deal.
come in and play some minutes. That could be a legitimate shooter if he actually gets playing time. Of course, I believe he scored 1 his last 2 G League games. 57 on
157 and 43.
Yeah, so Nick Stauskas. We've signed 2 Grand Rapids Gold players. Neither of which were Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah. Well, as much as we'd love an Isaiah Thomas reunion, you look at the way Pritchard's kind of been just giving us that little extra support off the bench, that backup 2-1. It's not really needed. I think a guy like Stauskas, I think he's a little bit bigger than IT. Well, he's definitely bigger than IT, but I think he's on the bigger side of a guard. Yeah, I think that was a good signing. I love it. Give us some shooting. That one thing that's kind of been inconsistent. Guy, give us 10 minutes, 15 minutes a game on some solid shooting. Get a little bit of depth in there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, too, with the Isaiah Thomas point, there's an argument here where, I just don't understand what teams' goals are. I think I said this already on this show, but I don't understand what teams' goals are with 10-day players right now. And Nick Stauskas, he's supposed to be a standard player, which that gives me optimism. It sounds more like a Jabari Parker acquisition where we saw Jabari Parker make an impact with the team, although, during his time with the Celtics, they weren't necessarily going anywhere with Jabari Parker, but you saw that he wasn't a 10-day guy. He wasn't coming in to ride the bench like some of these other guys. And that's what it just doesn't make sense to me with these 10-day guys. We keep seeing them on the bench and they're not even practicing right now. So I guess they give those guys paydays and that's great and all, but I don't understand why we don't play these players. And Isaiah Thomas, that's the argument for Isaiah Thomas for me is the fact that it would be a total PR stunt. Totally. But at the end of the season, say the last couple of games, say we have our playoff spot locked down, and if we have another 10-day contract to give out, why not? But this Stauskas deal, if the team wanted to fill up standard roster spots like they kind of are right now, where they signed Hauser, signed Luke Cornett, and now are signing Nick Stauskas, that would be better than just going out and getting Isaiah, of course, because you're actually planning on playing these guys or planning on developing these guys. And, Isaiah, like I said, that would be more of a PR stunt. But I don't know, 2 sides of the Isaiah Thomas point that people just love to talk about.
Yeah, well, IT's doing his thing. He had 10 points in his first game with Charlotte, so that's good for him. But I'm looking more into this Stauskas signing. 6'6". He did his thing. He was doing his thing in the G League, mind you. That is G League. He never really had too much success in the NBA. Last year, played for only 2 games for Miami, 5.5 points on 37.5 shooting from the floor. Year prior was in Cleveland, played 14 minutes, 5.5 points. And, we don't need much from him. I do like the signing on it. It's a little depth piece off the end of the bench. If things really aren't going well, this is a guy you can kind of throw in, run some off balls, maybe get him open, kind of have that extra shooting piece, especially with how, in my opinion, inefficient Aaron Nesmith has been from beyond the arc. This kind of just gives you a little cushion. I'd like to see Hauser out there, but it's interesting. Celtics signed him on a 2-year deal. So it's not just for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting about this is because they actually plan on him being here moving forward, and it's not just he's just gonna ride the bench for 10 days and not play. Yeah. We're not gonna we're just gonna pay him, and we're not actually going to do anything with him. This is what I'm talking about too with the Jabari Parker thing. That's what was great about that signing last year is you knew that he was going to be here this season, and he was for a portion. Same thing with Nick Stauskas. If they can get something out of him now, you wouldn't expect him to be, an everyday rotation player at the end of the season here just because of, the way the team has progressed and if everybody is healthy, of course. and just the fact that, there are 17 games left now, but certainly into next season, the team is still going to need shooting. And if Stauskas can just hit a couple of shots, this is probably one of his last chances in the NBA, and he's been out of the NBA for a while, so who knows what he's actually going to look like entirely. But you never know with these players, and this is how you find diamonds in the rough sometimes. And if the Celtics, if they can get him ramped up this season and get something out of him this season, and make themselves optimistic about him moving forward, I mean, solid signing, no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. And let's talk a little bit. Let's get into this next game, right? Celtics, Nets come to town. KD back healthy. Nets, I believe, did fall short of beating Miami at home. Tonight they lost 113-107. KD, first game back, 31 points though. Very efficient from the floor. Actually, from the 2, not from 3. Beyond the arc, he shot 2 of 7. From the floor, he shot 8 of 14, which is a very efficient clip. This is a big one, Seamus, right? Another TNT game, 1 o'clock start. The Celtics kind of don't like those midday games, not really their best friends. Jaylen Brown is listed as day-to-day, questionable to play. However, today during the broadcast, they were saying Brown was trying to get back into that Atlanta Hawks game. He said he was fine to play. However, staff held him back, didn't want to push it. Seemed they felt comfortable without him tonight. Didn't want to risk it, get him healthy for Brooklyn. So what do the C's kind of got to do this last game at home to potentially move up to that 4th seed now? You Celtics only a game, I believe, a half game back from Milwaukee in that for that 4 seed right now, or a game back.
Well, they have to keep playing how they've been playing, and of course against the Nets too. Now with Kevin Durant back in the lineup, and I don't know if Kyrie Irving is. Well, let's see. This is a home game for us, right?
Yeah.
Correct?
So Kyrie will be playing. Yeah.
So Kyrie will be playing, and you see those two guys on the court together. I mean, we talk about what could have been with Harden, KD, and Kyrie because we saw how good those three were together, but people forget KD and Kyrie alone dealt with before they had James Harden, and the fact that they're going to have those two offensive weapons with them. The Celtics have to continue to play tough, continue to play physical, and they have to bring offense. They have to consistently hit on offense on Sunday, and it's going to be a big boost if Jaylen Brown is back in the lineup. If he's not in the lineup, they could have some trouble with the Nets moving forward, but if Jaylen Brown is back and his scoring boost is back and the offense is more in that rhythm, that flow that it's been in as of late, rather than tonight where, you see Tatum take 25 shots and Marcus Smart take 17 shots and Al Horford is taking more of a responsibility on offense. Same with Derek White. If it's more of that style of a game, I don't feel as confident Celtics, but if Jaylen Brown is back, this is no doubt a game that we can come in and take care of the Nets because, like I said, they have their two offensive guys coming back, but they haven't been together for a while. And it's hard. If you're facing a team like the Celtics who are rolling right now, that's going to be a tough game for them. For the Nets, of course.
I think defensively, you got some big responsibility falls onto Tatum. I think if Tatum's the man that they pick to go one-on-one with Durant, which I would assume it is, I think he's got to come to play. Defensively, I'm not really worried about Kyrie. I feel comfortable with Smart. Obviously, Kyrie's Kyrie Irving. He's going to do his thing, regardless of how tight you can play him. I think offensively, the bench has got to keep doing what they're doing. If the bench can consistently give us, if White and Williams can continue to give us right around 20 to 25 points from the both of them, and then Pritchard gives us that nice little 5-6 point boost, and Tice gives us a couple good minutes, I think you're sitting nicely. Obviously, having Brown back would be huge. But this is a big one, Seamus, because the Celtics sit 2 games back of second place in the East. Just 2. Obviously, Philly has that second that tiebreaker over Chicago. Chicago falls at 3. Milwaukee, which is Boston's a game back from right now, sits at 4. It's possible. Obviously, the Celtics have been rolling. They got a couple of hard games coming up. They got Brooklyn on Sunday at the Garden. Then they fly out to Charlotte to go to play the Hornets on Wednesday night. So nice little 2-game break there, road trip. Then they come back home for a 2-game stand against the Pistons and Mavericks, and then they have their second half of the season West Coast road trip, which doesn't consist of too much. It consists of the Warriors and the Nuggets. Other than that, you got the Kings and the Thunder. So you look at these next 10 games, you see a lot of games that are very winnable for the Celtics. However, I say that, and you got to start to think, you look at the schedule, and every single game now is a game where the Celtics might be favorites to win. I mean, there's not a lot of teams that are playing at their level right now.
Yeah, and you just saw tonight, too, that, I mentioned it earlier. The Memphis Grizzlies were one of the hottest teams in basketball coming into tonight. And the Celtics, this was a relatively close game throughout. You always thought that the Grizzlies, they had the ability to make a run. They were within striking range. But the Celtics, they kind of wiped the floor with them at times. And the fact that they were able to do that, not only, down the stretch, but on national TV as well under that spotlight, it says a lot about a team that's, been down in the depths of just mediocrity and terribleness, that the fact that now they have a 9-game winning streak under their belt. They have, good response under their belt after that bad loss to the Pacers. They come out and beat the Hawks on national TV, and then they follow that up by beating one of the hottest teams in basketball, one of the most talked about teams in basketball this season in the Memphis Grizzlies. So the fact that the Celtics are here right now, they're going to be something to be dealt with moving forward. And let's get Ian's thoughts on here, because he's now 7-2 at game season or all time.
What did I tell you? What did I tell you? You had nothing to worry about. What did I say?
Well, so I have a couple questions. So you're obviously there, on TV. It sounded like the place was packed. How was the atmosphere?
Bro, I got here and I couldn't even find parking. I had to park across the street. I couldn't even park in North Station. That's how busy it was.
Yeah.
It was insane. There was so many people there, but it was amazing. It was so cool, bro.
So I will. I'm going to that Sunday game against Brooklyn. I'll be there, so I'm excited to do that. But how about that jaw dunk? Seeing that in person, how high does he actually get up?
Bro, it looked like his head was a foot above the rim. I'm not even lying. It was insanity. The slow motion replays don't do it justice. You had to see that live. That was nuts.
Yeah, well, they only come around once, but thoughts, opinions, Celtics kind of rolling right now.
Bro, I mean, I don't know how the Grizzlies lost to Al Horford, but I mean, the Celtics were this is the best I think we've seen the Celtics all season. I mean, this was probably their best all-together game, even though Jaylen Brown and Aaron Nesmith ended up getting injured.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should probably emphasize that more. They beat the Memphis Grizzlies tonight pretty handedly down the stretch too, and they handled them in the late in the fourth quarter, where you typically see them fall apart. And there's no Jaylen Brown.
Yeah,
there's no Jaylen Brown. Of course, they didn't have Dylan Brooks, and he's obviously a big part of their team as well. But they haven't had him for a while, and so the fact that the Celtics were able to come out and actually, find themselves and find a way to win without Jaylen Brown. And even last game, too, against the Atlanta Hawks, they lost him pretty early in that game. And Aaron Nesmith as well. He started tonight. I mean, that really does say something about this team right now. And I keep saying that this says something about this team, but it's true. The fact that all of these things are adding up, these wins and how they're winning games and just the circumstances in which they're winning through, that's why there's so much optimism around this team right now. I'm kind of excited moving forward, because it's not last year's team. It really isn't.
So I want to say this is the best Celtics basketball we have played in 2 years. It really since that, I'd say this is even better than we were playing in the bubble. And it really is just exciting, and all signs are pointing up. One of the questions during that big winning streak was, can the Celtics beat good teams, right? They're destroying, beating up by 30, 40 points against these kind of banged up bad teams, mediocre teams, right? But then you get you get games here against the Hawks at home and against the Grizzlies without Jaylen Brown, and they're continuing to respond, and I think that's definitely big for the Celtics. And Sunday's a big test for the C's here. We will have you covered post game live after the final buzzer. You can come check us out right back here, guys. Before we close out the show, final thoughts, final words about
Final
Celtics.
thoughts. The Grizzlies need help.
Yeah.
Well,
they cannot stop the Celtics. The
shout out-
Celtics are the greatest team in the NBA.
Shout out to Al Horford tonight. We didn't talk about him too much in the post-game show, but he was just fantastic tonight. And in the first half, he was 3 of 6, and he ended the game with 21 points, and he was 8 of 16 from the field. One of the more games Al Horford has seen all season long against this Grizzlies team. He was so big, and essentially, number one, just making his shots. We talk about this. Al Horford, he needs to make his shots to make an impact, and he's one of those guys who can. He's a perimeter big. He can go out to the perimeter and hit shots, and he brought Steven Adams out to the perimeter, especially in the second half. There opened up more lanes for Jason Tatum to dominate, and it was really a domino effect. So Al Horford, he was huge in this game tonight against the Memphis Grizzlies. But also, second thought here, I cannot wait to use the video of Vivek Ranadive, Sacramento Kings owner, saying "Stauskas, Stauskas, Stauskas, Stauskas" like 7 times before they drafted him in 2014. They thought they were getting their franchise player, but hey, Nick Stauskas is now a Boston Celtic in the year of 2022. So I cannot wait to use that video a million times if, of course, Nick Stauskas does play.
Yeah, well,
Celtics just dropped like 50 in the G League.
Yeah, almost 50, 57 and 43. He's been going crazy, but Celtics got a chance to keep it rolling Sunday afternoon back at TD Garden against the Brooklyn Nets, the struggling Brooklyn Nets, mind you. They are on a 3-game losing streak, so things aren't really looking great for them. But KD and Kyrie are back in town. We will have you covered post game back here on your YouTube. Go follow us all on our social medias. All links are in the description, guys. And